Continue our journey with Gopal Kumar, Sri Brhad Bhagavatamrta, Part 2, Chapter 5, starting with text number 197. We're going to hear about Akrura's contemplations on Krishna, although he's just been called a bad name. Text 197. Akrura thought, quote, "Those lotus feet are worshipped by Brahma, Shiva, and all the other demigods, by the goddess of fortune, and also by the great sages and Vaishnavas. Upon those lotus feet, the Lord walks about the forest while herding the cows with his companions, and those feet are smeared with a kumkum from the gopis' breasts." Commentary. This verse is from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:38-8. It expresses one of the thoughts Akrura had while on the road to Vrindavan. The persons of whom Akrura speaks, he mentions one after another in the order of their increasing greatness. Were he not to mention them in this way, his praise would be as ridiculous as praise given to the same person first for being a great Brahmana and then a great king. Competent poets disapprove of such awkward sequences, semicolon. Such poets generally glorify related subjects in order from the least significant to the most, paragraph. That Brahma and other demigods worship Krishna's lotus feet indicate that those feet are the supreme worshipable deity and that Krishna is the supreme controller. The goddess Lakshmi, who bestows all riches simply by her sidelong glance, also worships Krishna's feet, which indicates that Krishna's feet possess the extreme limit of good fortune. Mystics who pardon me. Mystics who are self-satisfied, Atmarama, are indifferent to the favors of the goddess of fortune, yet they also worship Krishna's lotus feet. This means that to obtain Krishna's feet is the highest goal of life. And apart from the great mystics, also worshiping Krishna's feet are the devotees, interested only in pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Such devotees are much greater than the Atmarama mystics because pure devotees do not care even for liberation. This also implies that Krishna is the most generous giver of charity because to such pure devotees he gives away even his very self. Paragraph. Sages, busy in the cultivation of karma and jnana, have no time to worship the personality of Godhead's lotus feet. They lack the special knowledge that would inspire them to begin such worship, and they also lack the spiritual strength needed for devotional service. But karmi and jnani sages who associate with pure Vaishnavas can receive the Vaishnava's mercy and thus acquire the requisite knowledge and strength. In other words, the devotees of the Supreme Lord are superior to non-devotee sages. Paragraph. By referring to the goddess Shri as Devi or demigoddess, rather than Bhagavati, beloved of Bhagavan, Akrura indicates that he is talking not about Lord Narayan's wife Mahalakshmi, but about the partial expansion of Mahalakshmi, who rules the opulences of the material world. Partial expansion of Mahalakshmi rules the opulences of the material world. Vaishnavas worship the original Mahalakshmi as the dearmost consort of the Supreme Lord, which means that the Vaishnavas accept her as greater than themselves. Paragraph. Akrura contemplates Krishna going to the forest with his companions, the young cowherd boys, and in this way thinks of Krishna's absolute affection and compassion for his devotees. The forest is Vrindavan, the place of Krishna's greatest pleasure pastimes, and the purpose of his entering that forest is to tend cows, a pastime of supreme happiness. Paragraph. It is not precisely right to think that the words architam and anucharai together mean worshipped by his companions. There may be some grammatical justification for such an understanding, but because the cowherd boys are intimate friends, their quote worship of his lotus feet differs from the worship usually indicated by the word architam. Paragraph. This is like a Bhagavatam commentary. One of his books was 10th Canto commentary. And this is a creative one. Akrura says that Krishna's lotus feet are smeared with kumkum from the breasts of the gopis. This not only points towards an uncommon mode of worshiping the Supreme Lord, but also indicates how Krishna sports romantically and bestows the highest form of his mercy by coming under the control of pure love. The gopis are mentioned last in the comparative sequence because they are the greatest of all Krishna's worshippers. And the word yad is repeated a second time in the last line to highlight the special nature of their worship. The sweetness invoked by the image of Krishna's feet smeared with the gopis' kumkum suggests that his loving exchanges with the gopis are the most important purpose for which he descended as an avatar, semicolon. His favoring the gopis by submitting to their love is the most glorious thing he ever does. Paragraph. In this way, Akrura compares various worshippers of Krishna's lotus feet in exactly the fitting order, colon. Lord Brahma is greater than the demigods, Lord Shiva greater than Brahma, the goddess Shri greater than Shiva, the self-contented sages greater than Shri, the pure Vaishnavas greater than the sages, and Krishna's cowherd friends, and finally the gopis greater than all others. Thus, Akrura became ecstatic as he approached Vrindavan, thinking, quote, text 4, that was text 8, and now he's going over to text 15 from chapter 38, Akrura going to Vrindavan. Then I will at once alight from my chariot and bow down to the lotus feet of Krishna and Balaram, the supreme personalities of Godhead. Theirs are the same feet that great mystic yogis striving for self-realization bear within their minds, I will also offer my obeisances to the Lord's cowherd boy friends and to all the other residents of Vrindavan, unquote. That was nice. 198. And when I have fallen at his feet, this is verses 16, 17, following the previous one. When I have fallen at his feet, the Almighty Lord will place his hand upon my head. For those who seek shelter in him, because they are greatly disturbed by the swift, powerful serpent of time, that hand removes all fear. Akrura is actually a great devotee. Commentary. Akrura also speaks this verse and the next in the 10th canto, 1617, chapter 38. The words Kala, Bhujanga suggest that the persons who are serious about achieving liberation fear the force of time. In another sense, however, the words Kala, Bhujanga refer to liberation itself, comparing it to an all-devouring python, or, still another meaning of Bhujanga, a profligate man. A profligate man may boldly enter another person's house and refuse to leave, even if the owner tries to expel him, semicolon. Similarly, even though by the strength of Vaishnava association, a liberated soul may come to understand the paltriness of liberation and try to reject it, liberation may still persist in its hold on him. Profligate,
recklessly extravagant or wasteful in the use of resources.
Okay, right. Okay, good. 199, you were anticipating.
I'm trying to make,
You were also wanting to understand the meaning. Okay, profligate man. Profligate. 199. By offering charity to that lotus hand, Purandara and Bali earned the status of Indra, king of heaven. And during the pleasure pastimes of the rasa dance, when the Lord wiped away the gopis' perspiration and removed their fatigue, the touch of their faces made that hand as fragrant as a sweet flower. And we're going to hear in the purport who's Indra Purandara. Commentary. Having described how Krishna removes all fear from persons who take shelter of him, Akrura now describes how Krishna awards his devotees success in life, whether or not they still have material desires, and how he gives himself away to his most submitted devotees. Paragraph. Both Indra, while performing sacrifice, and Bali, while fulfilling Lord Vamana's request for charity, sanctified their acts by placing items of worship in the Supreme Lord's hand. That was the right way for them to proceed, because no one can have a fruitful ritualistic performance without making some offering to the Supreme Lord. Paragraph. Here the word kaushika, it's in the verse. In the translation, word for word is Purandara, Kaushika. Refers to Indra Purandara, who is called Kaushika because he is a descendant of Kushika Rishi. But Kaushika is also another name of the sage Vishwamitra. During the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra, Vishwamitra made various offerings to the Lord, such as teachings in Shastra and mantras, and various items of hospitality in his ashram, including sanctified food, it is well known how Vishwamitra thus became great in several ways, especially by attaining intense devotion to the Lord's lotus feet. Thus, Vishwamitra became as prominent among the sages as Indra among the demigods. I still don't understand the Purandara reference. Kaushika, Indra Purandara. Indra Purandara. What does that mean, Purandara? Something for research.
Oh,
Yeah.
says, because Indra is a title, the current Indra, his name is Purandara.
And so, what's the name Purandara connected with Indra? That's his name.
That's his name. And the title is Indra.
So Purandara, whoever he was the son of, was appointed in the post of Indra.
Yes.
Indra Purandara.
Yes.
So I'd like to find out more about Purandara, who was appointed in the post of Indra. Here the word Kaushika refers to Indra Purandara, who is called Kaushika because he is a descendant of Kushika Rishi. But Kaushika is also another name of the sage Vishwamitra. Okay. Continuing, next paragraph. Krishna blessed the gopis with the highest joy and became subservient to the dictates of their love because they considered him their very life and soul. The word vihara, or sport, indicates that Krishna's pastimes with the gopis were very enjoyable. The word vraja yoshitam, or of the women of Vraja, suggests that it was fitting for Krishna to grant them his favor because these women of Vraja, the gopis, were so affectionate to him. The word shamam, fatigue, implies that Krishna reciprocated with the gopis very skillfully, giving them the greatest pleasure, which compensated for the effort the gopis spent in singing and dancing. That's this shamam. They became fatigued. That he removed their fatigue by his touch, sparshena, implies the coolness of his touch, and that his hand is saugandhika gandhi, fragrant like a flower, implies that his hand is supremely attractive and has the power to create happiness. In the same way that the subtle fragrance of a flower may be perceivable only by certain people, Krishna's beauty and charm are fully relished only by devotees as dear to him as the Vrajagopis. Filled with poetry. Text 200. Narada continued. The grandfather of the Kurus and Pandavas, Bhishma himself, sworn to the great vow of lifelong celibacy and strictly true to the principles of religion, at the time of passing away, praised the personality of Godhead by telling of the excellence of the young women of Vraja. Commentary. As wonderful as it was that Akrura appreciated the gopis, it is even more amazing that Bhishma, a warrior and lifelong celibate, who should know nothing about such things, also glorified these young girls. As Bhishma lay in a bed of arrows on the Kurukshetra battlefield, just before he left his body, he sang the glories of Krishna's girlfriends in Vrindavan. This was the same Bhishma Dev who was a strict Naishtika brahmachari, a Kshatriya more interested in warfare than romantic concerns, the same Bhishma who dueled with his own guru Parashuram, the Supreme Lord's incarnation, and shot cruel arrows at Krishna, Arjun's chariot driver. Such a great authority is Bhishma. Such a great authority is Bhishma that if he considers the gopis so elevated, surely they must be. Great. Oh, how wonderful. 201. Let my mind, this is 1940. That's Bhishma Dev. Let my mind be fixed upon Lord Sri Krishna, whose motions, gestures, sweet smiles, and loving glances made the gopis of Vrajadam feel greatly honored. Those gopis, in blind ecstasy, imitated the activities of Krishna and became just like him. Fantastic. First canto. Commentary. This verse is from Srimad Bhagavatam 1:940, is among those that impart Bhishma's final words. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, favored the gopis with the highest honor by worshiping them with his own graceful movements and gestures during his rasa dance and other pastimes. Therefore, the gopis should be understood to be the greatest devotees of the Supreme Lord, greater than all the recipients of the Lord's gifts of sense enjoyment, power, liberation, and devotion, and greater even than Mahalakshmi. Paragraph. When Krishna left the gopis at the beginning of the rasa dance, in their ecstatic madness, they became as if blind, semicolon. In other words, they lost their ability to see the means and ends of happiness in this world and the next. In that state, they acted out as pastimes, like the lifting of Govardhan Hill, and became just like him. That is to say, they entered a special kind of trance in which their bodies assumed many of his excellent qualities. Prakritim agan. The gopis, fixed in the Satchit Ananda spiritual nature, then appeared worthy of worship by the entire world, able to deliver the universe, and full of compassion for everyone. Semicolon, a paragraph. Or, taking the meaning of the word prakriti to be mind and agan to be entered, prakriti agan, mind entered. When Krishna was away from the rasa dance, the gopis deeply entered his mind. And because of their extreme devotion, while feeling his absence, they became the object of his deep meditation. Therefore, the gopis are glorified in this way. Padyavali 351. Quote, even great yogis are not able to pursue your method of worshiping the Supreme Lord with the feeling of his absence. He is the proper object of meditation, but you have become the object of his. This is a perfection nearly impossible to attain. I mean, this is his own, Sanatana Goswami's commentary. Bhagavatamrta Tika, along with the book. And he's quoting Rupa Goswami. How wonderful. Though Krishna is the supreme goal rarely achieved of powerful lords of the universe like Brahma and other demigods, of self-satisfied yogis like Sanaka and his brothers, of pure devotees like Narada and his beloved consorts like the goddess Lakshmi. Krishna truly worships the gopis, endeavoring to attract them with his unprecedented and splendid pastimes. When the gopis are maddened in the height of their love in separation, they cannot discern right from wrong. And so they imitate Krishna's activities and invade Krishna's own mind. Thus, they are surely the greatest of all Vaishnavas, and to be the only object of desire for these greatest of Vaishnavas, Krishna must be the supreme person. Paragraph. Thinking like this, Bhishma, filled with ecstasy at the time of his passing away, prayed that Sri Gopinath be present before his eyes as he left his body. Very beautiful. 202. The ladies of the capital of King Yudhishthira spoke the same way among themselves while watching that very personality of Godhead leave for his own capital. And it ends with a colon. It goes to another verse, 110, 28. That's the next verse. So as Krishna is departing Hastinapur, they're contemplating the good fortune of Krishna's wives, apparently. Commentary. Since the greatly learned Bhishma knew about the glories of the personality of Godhead, it is understandable that he should have spoken such praise of the gopis. More surprising, however, is that women without such specialized knowledge could glorify the gopis in the same way, as did the women of Hastinapur, as described first Canto, chapter 10, text 20. Quote, absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord, who is glorified in special poetry, select poetry, the ladies on the roofs of all houses of Hastinapur began to talk of him. This talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas, unquote. Sridhar Swami explains, quote, the prayers of the ladies in Hastinapur attracted the attention of all the Vedas, and thus the personified Upanishad congratulated those ladies because the ladies belonged to the capital of Sri Yudhishthira, the Kaurava king. It is implied that by their connection with him, they certainly could have spoken such realizations. And him is with a small h, so it means their connection with Yudhishthira. Paragraph. What is more, the women of Hastinapur expressed those realizations in a moment of painful crisis for them, when Krishna was leaving the Kaurava capital for his own city, Dwarka. Krishna's influence is so wonderful that even while Krishna was abandoning them, they could glorify their rivals in Dwarka and Vrindavan. Fantastic. Their rivals. Transcendental. 203. This is what they say in verse 28 of chapter 10. Oh, friends, just think of his wives, whose hands he has accepted. How they must have undergone vows, baths, fire sacrifices, and perfect worship of the Lord of the universe to constantly relish now the nectar from his lips. The damsels of Rajabhumi would often faint just by expecting such favors, unquote. This verse appears in the song by the Hastinapur ladies in the first canto, chapter 10, verse 28. In the opinion of these ladies, Sri Krishna's queens in Dwarka must, in previous life, have disciplined themselves and worshipped him in many ways to have gained him as their husband. For those queens can regularly taste the nectar of Krishna's lips, but the gopis of Vrindavan are even greater because they always think about that nectar within their hearts. The nectar of Krishna's lips must be exceedingly pleasant, since the gopis, those most respectable girls, are enchanted by it. Thus, it is proven once again that Krishna is the Supreme Person, and that because of the extreme love of the divine gopis of Vraja have for him, they are superior even to Sri Rukmini and Krishna's other wives. Paragraph. Surely the gopis also had the privilege of drinking the Adaramrita, or the nectar from Krishna's lips, Adaramrita. But beyond even that, they would become bewildered just by remembering it. Paragraph. Although one can also achieve Sri Goloka by developing love in the mood of Mother Jasoda, Nanda Maharaj, and other Vrajvasis, it is mainly by developing love that follows the mood of the gopis that one can attain the special perfection in which all one's ambitions are fulfilled. Paragraph. Sri Uddhava speaks another verse glorifying the gopis in the third canto, chapter 2, text 14. Quote, the damsels of Vraja, after pastimes of laughter, humor, and exchanges of glances, were anguished when Krishna left them. They used to follow him with their eyes, and then they sat down with stunned intelligence and couldn't finish their household duties, unquote. Narada, however, chose to forego reciting this verse because he wished to avoid making the pure devotees who were present remember the pain the gopis felt after Krishna left Vrindavan. And that's the end of their little discussion. We're at verse 204. I'll read one more verse, two more verses. Sri Gopakumar said, after speaking thus, the great sage Narada embraced me. Immersed in waves of an ocean of love of Godhead, he trembled and wept, and his hairs stood on end. He bit his tongue, a tongue uncontrollably eager to keep speaking, and he danced wonderfully and showed many symptoms of ecstasy. Commentary. Narada wanted to hold back from elaborating any further on the many-faceted glories of the gopis because he was afraid of losing control of himself in ecstasy. As it was, he was already beginning to lose control. In fact, right in front of Gopakumar and Uddhava, he rolled on the ground, jumped about, and shouted and cried like a madman. Text 205. A moment later, he came back to more or less normal, more or less. Seeing me feeling discouraged, the best of sages spoke again, consoling me with sweet words. Commentary. Seeing Narada go mad in ecstasy made Gopakumar worry that his own goal might be difficult to achieve. Narada continues tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki, Brhad Bhagavatamrta ki, Gaur Pimanandi. Yeah, what a literature, huh?
Yeah.
Shoo.
So